The sun stood high above the small town as the wedding guests walked out of the old church with smiles on their faces. Armin and Layla stepped through the doorway hand in hand, glowing with the joy of a new beginning. Their families had planned this day for months, and every detail felt touched by love, from the soft music to the flowers along the path leading to the gate. Armin was calm by nature and always thoughtful. Layla was gentle and full of kindness. Together they created a harmony that everyone around them could feel. When they exchanged vows inside the church, their voices shook with emotion, and their families wiped tears with quiet joy. As they stepped into the daylight, the guests cheered and tossed flower petals into the air. The newlyweds walked toward the small white car that waited outside, decorated with ribbons. They were planning to take a short drive to a nearby hill where they wanted to take pictures before joining their families for lunch. Friends gathered around the car, asking for one more photo and offering warm wishes for happiness and peace in their new life. Armin opened the door for Layla, and she smiled at him with the soft trust that had grown between them over the years. They sat inside the car talking about their future, the home they would build, and the simple dreams they shared. Armin started the engine and waved to the crowd as the car slowly rolled forward. The road ahead led through quiet farmland where the wind moved gently through the tall grass. For a moment, everything felt perfect and calm. But as they approached a narrow turn near the old stone bridge, Armin noticed something unusual about the feel of the steering wheel. It felt loose, almost disconnected from the wheels. He frowned and tried to adjust his grip, expecting it to steady itself, but the car shifted slightly to the left without him turning it. Layla looked at him with confusion as the car drifted closer to the edge of the road. Armin pressed the brakes, but the pedal sank too easily, and the speed did not slow. A thin line of worry crossed his face as he held the wheel tighter. They were only minutes away from the hill, and everything had been perfect moments earlier. Now something was very wrong, yet neither of them knew why. The car glided forward with a strange pull that Armin could not control. He glanced once more at Layla, and she sensed the fear rising in him. Before they could speak, the car jolted sharply, as if something underneath had snapped. The quiet road suddenly felt dangerous, and the bridge ahead seemed to rush toward them far faster than before. Armin braced himself, struggling to control the wheel, while Layla held the side of the seat, her heart pounding with fear. In that moment, the celebration of a new life turned into the beginning of a mystery that no one in the town would forget. The car shot forward with a speed that did not match the gentle pressure of Armin's foot. The old bridge ahead grew larger and closer as the vehicle drifted out of his control. Armin pulled the wheel to the right, hoping to guide the car back to the center of the road, but the wheel felt loose, like it was not connected to anything. Layla pressed her hands together, trying to stay calm, but the fear in her eyes said everything. The car continued toward the stone guardrail of the bridge with a slow and frightening slide. At the last second, Armin managed to angle the car slightly, which helped them avoid a direct crash. Instead, the car scraped against the side of the stone wall, sending sparks into the air as the metal brushed the old stones. The sound startled birds resting on nearby trees. They flew high into the sky as the car skidded to a stop near the midpoint of the bridge. The engine coughed and then went silent. For a moment, everything was still. The air around them felt heavy. Armin sat frozen with his hands still gripping the wheel. Layla blinked, trying to understand what had just happened. They were both shaken but unharmed. Armin slowly stepped out of the car and walked to the front. He wanted to see what had gone wrong. When he bent down, he noticed something strange. A small part of the steering linkage was broken cleanly, as if it had been cut by a tool. He stared at it, confused. Cars did not break like that on their own. He showed the broken part to Layla, and she looked at it with the same confusion. Neither of them could understand how the steering could break in such a clean and deliberate way. A soft wind blew across the bridge, carrying dust and dried leaves. Armin felt uneasy. The town was peaceful, and no one had any reason to harm them. They were known to everyone. Their families had lived in that town for generations. He could not think of any person who would want to damage their car. Layla placed her hand on his arm, trying to reassure him that they were safe, but even she felt the strange heaviness in the air. Armin checked the brakes next. The pedal had felt too soft earlier, so he wanted to see why. When he kneeled down, he found a thin streak of fluid on the inside of the wheel. It looked like brake fluid. He followed the trail with his eyes and saw that the brake line had a small puncture. It was no accident. The hole was made by something sharp and intentional. This time his breath caught in his throat. Someone had tampered with the car. Someone had damaged it on purpose. Layla covered her mouth as the truth began to form. It was not a random failure. Someone had tried to cause harm on their wedding day. They tried to restart the car, but the engine refused to turn on. The newlyweds stood on the empty bridge surrounded by silence. Not a single other vehicle passed by. The road was usually quiet, but today it felt even more isolated. Armin decided to walk to a nearby farmhouse that he remembered from childhood. It was not far from the bridge, and they needed help. He held Layla's hand, and together they walked along the road, leaving the broken car behind them. The farmhouse belonged to an old man named Malik. He had lived alone for years after his children moved to the city. When Armin and Layla reached the gate, they saw Malik sitting on a wooden chair facing the fields. He looked surprised to see them so soon after leaving the wedding. He asked what happened, and Armin told him everything. Malik listened without interrupting, then stood up slowly with a deep frown on his face. Malik said he had heard strange sounds earlier that morning. He thought it was just travelers passing by, but now he wondered if someone had been near the bridge. He invited them inside and offered them water. Layla sat down trying to steady her breathing, while Armin paced the room thinking of every person who might have had access to their car before they left the ceremony. After a few minutes, Malik asked Armin to come with him to the barn. He said he wanted to show something. Armin followed him, wondering what he had found. Malik walked to the corner of the barn where a tool bench stood covered in dust. He pointed at a small metal part lying on the floor. It was a bolt that looked almost identical to the one from Armin's steering system. Malik explained that he had found it near his gate 2 days earlier. He did not think much of it because people often passed by the farm and sometimes dropped things. Armin picked it up and noticed scratches on it. It looked out of place. Then Malik lowered his voice and told Armin about a man who had been wandering near the bridge the past week. He wore a cap pulled low on his forehead and a long coat even in warm weather. Malik had asked him once if he needed help, but the man walked away without speaking. Malik assumed he was a traveler or someone looking for work, but now it did not feel normal. Layla joined them in the barn and listened to what Malik was telling Armin. Her face grew pale. She had never heard of any stranger in their town. The idea that someone unknown had been watching the bridge made her uneasy. Armin tried to stay calm, but inside he felt a growing worry. He thanked Malik for his help and said they would walk back to the car and wait for a passing vehicle to take them home. Before they left, Malik warned them to stay together and be careful. He said the road felt different lately, as if someone was always watching from far away. Layla squeezed Armin's hand a little tighter. They stepped out of the farmhouse and walked toward the bridge again. The sun had begun to lower, giving the sky a soft orange color. It cast long shadows across the road which made everything look stretched and quiet. When they reached the bridge, the car sat unchanged, but the silence felt deeper now. Armin checked inside the car in case something else had been tampered with. Layla stood near the rail looking down at the river below. The water moved slowly with a calm surface, but she felt a strange tension in the air. The river seemed too quiet. The entire place felt too still. Armin found nothing new inside the car and stepped out just as Layla turned to him with a troubled expression. She felt as if someone had been there while they were gone. Armin did not want her to panic, so he tried to reassure her again, but he also sensed the same thing. The ground near the front wheel had faint footprints in the dust. They were fresh. Too fresh. Someone had walked near the car not long ago. Armin looked around trying to spot anyone in the distance, but the fields stretched empty on all sides. They were alone on the bridge, yet someone had been watching. Layla stepped closer to Armin, feeling a chill move across her arms. Then she saw something inside the car that made her heart race. A small white paper was tucked under the wiper. It had not been there before. Armin reached for it with trembling fingers. The paper had only one short message written in a hurried hand. It read, "Do not return to the town." The message made no sense. They were from the town. Their families lived there. Everything they knew was there. Layla felt her knees weaken. Armin held her quickly and guided her to sit on the guardrail. He read the message again and again, trying to understand what it meant. Who would want them away from the town? Why now? Why today? A day that should have been filled with joy had turned into a day filled with fear and confusion. Armin folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He knew they could not stay on the bridge any longer. They needed to return to their families and tell them everything. Even if the message warned them not to go back, he could not ignore the danger. He signaled to Layla to get ready to walk. They would try to reach the main road and ask for help. Just as they stepped away from the bridge, they heard the faint sound of footsteps on gravel. Both of them turned quickly. A figure stood at the far end of the bridge. The sun was behind the figure, which covered the face in shadow. The person did not move closer, but stood still as if waiting. Armin felt a wave of fear, but he kept himself steady. Layla held his arm tightly. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of the river. The figure remained silent. Armin called out, asking who they were, but the stranger did not answer. Instead, the figure lifted an arm and pointed toward the fields. The gesture was slow and deliberate. It felt like a warning. After a few long seconds, the figure turned and walked away, disappearing behind the trees near the bend in the road. Armin and Layla stood frozen, unable to understand what they had just witnessed. Armin felt a deep urgency rising in him. Something dangerous was happening around them. Something connected to the car and the message and the broken bridge. Layla gathered her strength and nodded. They began to walk quickly toward the main road, hoping to find someone who could help them. Every step felt heavier as the mystery thickened around them. They did not know that the truth behind the bridge went deeper than they imagined. The danger was not just about a broken car. It was tied to a secret that had been hidden in the town for many years. A secret that was now rising to the surface, pulling the Newlyweds into its shadow without mercy. Armin and Layla walked away from the bridge with quick steps, both of them looking over their shoulders from time to time. The road was quiet, yet every sound felt louder than usual. A rustling leaf, a distant bird, a shift in the wind, everything seemed to carry a warning. Layla held her dress slightly lifted so she could walk faster. Armin kept her close, making sure she did not fall or get tired. Their wedding clothes no longer looked festive. They looked worn from fear and dust. The main road came into sight after some time. It stretched long and empty, but at least it connected to the town. Armin hoped a passing vehicle would pick them up, but the road stayed silent. Layla asked if they should return to Malik's farmhouse, but Armin shook his head gently. He felt that going back the same way could be dangerous. Whoever had tampered with the car and left the warning might still be nearby. They needed to reach their families and tell them everything before night arrived. As they walked further, they noticed tire marks on the side of the road. They were fresh and deep. Armin examined them carefully. The ground showed that the vehicle had stopped and then turned back toward the town. It was the same direction the stranger had pointed before leaving the bridge. Layla stared at the marks with worry. She asked Armin if the stranger was trying to warn them or threaten them. Armin could not answer. He felt torn between fear and confusion. Nothing made sense. They continued walking until the roofs of the town appeared in the distance. A sense of relief mixed with hesitation. They were close to safety, but the warning in the note echoed in their minds. Armin felt more alert than before. He looked at the houses, the streets, the fields, and the old windmill near the entrance of the town. Everything looked normal, yet something felt different. A silence hung in the air like a blanket. When they reached the first street, they saw a boy riding a bicycle. He stopped when he noticed them and looked surprised to see the Newlyweds walking instead of arriving in a decorated car. Armin asked him if he had seen anything unusual near the bridge earlier that day. The boy thought for a moment, then said he had seen a large black van pass through the area around sunrise. He remembered it because it was a vehicle he had never seen in the town before. The van had tinted windows and moved slowly as if the driver was searching for something. Armin thanked the boy and continued. The black van made everything feel even more suspicious. Layla felt a shiver move through her. She had always believed their wedding day would be filled with joy and family and laughter. Instead, it felt like they were running from something they did not understand. When they reached Armin's home, his mother rushed outside the moment she saw them. Her face filled with worry because the guests had been waiting for them for hours. Armin explained everything he could without frightening her too much. Her expression changed from worry to shock. She guided them inside where Armin's father sat with a thoughtful look. He listened carefully to the story of the broken steering line, the punctured brake pipe, the warning note, and the stranger on the bridge. After hearing everything, Armin's father took a long breath. There was something he had kept hidden for many years. Something he had prayed would never resurface. He asked Armin and Layla to sit. His voice grew quiet as he began to speak about the past. Many years ago, before Armin was born, a dangerous group had been active in several towns nearby. They were involved in illegal land deals and pressured small landowners to sell their fields at low prices. When Armin's grandfather refused to sell his land, the group threatened him. A few days later, an accident occurred near the same bridge. The cart his grandfather was riding in had lost control and fallen into the river. Many believed it was an accident, but some whispered that it had been done on purpose. After that night, the group disappeared from the town. Armin's father had hoped they had moved far away. But seeing the broken parts of the car reminded him of those days. The same method had been used back then. Clean cuts, sharp punctures, and no signs of struggle. He feared that the group or someone connected to them had returned. Perhaps they wanted the land again, or maybe they held an old grudge. Layla listened with wide eyes. She never imagined that her new family had such a history of danger. She reached for Armin's hand and held it tightly. The truth changed everything. The threat was not random. It was connected to old wounds that had never fully healed. Armin felt anger rising in him, but he tried to stay calm for Layla's sake. His father suggested they go to the police at once. But as Armin prepared to leave, he noticed a shadow outside the window. Someone was standing across the street. When Armin moved toward the window, the shadow shifted and disappeared behind a wall. Armin stepped outside but saw no one. The street was empty once again. Armin told his father they had to move quickly. They walked toward the police station while Layla stayed inside with Armin's mother. The town seemed normal from a distance, but once they stepped into the streets, they saw small signs that something was wrong. A few shopkeepers stood outside talking in worried tones. A crowd gathered near the marketplace, whispering about a black van parked near the old warehouse that morning. When Armin and his father reached the police station, the officer on duty listened carefully. He said he had received 2 other reports about the unknown van. A farmer had seen it parked near his fields before sunrise. Another resident had seen a man in a long coat walking through the market without speaking to anyone. The officer assured them that he would look into it immediately. He sent 2 policemen to search the area near the bridge and the warehouse. Armin and his father returned home after giving their statements. The streets growing quieter as evening approached. Lanterns lit the paths with a soft glow. Layla waited by the doorway, her face full of relief when she saw Armin. She hugged him tightly and he held her close. She asked what the police said and Armin explained everything. But the night was far from over. As the sun disappeared, a loud knock came on the door. Everyone froze. Armin's father opened the door carefully. 2 policemen stood there with serious expressions. They said they had found the black van abandoned near the river. The engine was warm, meaning it had been used very recently. Inside the van they found maps of the town, certain marked locations, and an old photograph of Armin's grandfather. The photograph had a red circle drawn around it. The danger was real and close. The officers warned the family to stay inside and lock the doors. They said they would increase patrols in the area and continue searching for the stranger. Armin felt a heavy weight settle on him. He had just begun his married life, and already danger was circling around them. Layla tried to stay strong, but fear showed in her eyes. She had married Armin with dreams of peace and happiness. Instead, she found herself in a story that felt like a forgotten chapter returning from the past. Hours passed slowly. The house remained quiet and tense. Armin sat with Layla on the sofa trying to comfort her. He promised they would face everything together and protect their families. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Trees swayed and shadows danced across the windows. Near midnight, a loud siren echoed through the town. Armin stood up quickly. His father opened the curtain slightly to look outside. A police car sped down the road with flashing lights. Then, another followed. Something urgent was happening. Armin decided to step outside with his father to see if they could learn what was going on. Layla wanted to come, but Armin asked her to stay inside for safety. They walked toward the direction of the commotion. A small crowd had gathered near the warehouse. When Armin reached the area, he saw police officers searching every corner. One of them approached Armin and said they had found signs that someone had been living there temporarily. A blanket, a few tools, and a notebook had been left behind in a hurry. The notebook contained sketches of the bridge and details about car mechanics. It was clear the person had studied how to damage vehicles quietly. The officer said they also found footprints leading away from the warehouse toward the forest on the edge of the town. They believed the suspect had fled when the police arrived. They would continue the search through the night. Armin nodded, though worry still clouded his mind. He returned home with his father, unsure of what the next day would bring. When he stepped into the house, he found Layla standing near the window. Her expression was strange. Armin walked toward her and asked what was wrong. She did not speak at first. Instead, she handed him a small piece of paper she had found slipped through the gap under the door while they were gone. Armin unfolded it and read the message. It said, "Leave before sunrise or the truth will take everything from you." The message shook him deeply. This was no longer about land or old grudges. The person behind these threats wanted them gone for a reason that remained hidden. Layla asked Armin what they should do. Her voice trembled with fear. Armin looked at her for a long moment. He felt a mix of determination and sorrow. He told her they would leave at sunrise if the police had not caught the person by then. He could not risk her life or the safety of their families. That night, they packed a small bag. A few clothes, some documents, and a photograph from their wedding ceremony. They did not sleep. They sat together waiting for the first light of morning. The silence between them was full of unspoken worries. At dawn, Armin stepped outside to check the street. He saw no one. The sky was turning pale and the air was cool. He signaled to Layla and they stepped out together. They planned to walk to Malik's farmhouse and wait there for a relative to pick them up. They hoped distance from the town would keep them safe. They reached the main street when they heard footsteps behind them. They turned and saw the same figure from the bridge. The man in the long coat with the cap pulled low. He stood a short distance away. Armin moved in front of Layla to protect her. The figure raised his hand to show he carried no weapon. He spoke with a quiet voice, saying he had never intended to harm them. He said he had tried to warn them. He told them the danger did not come from him but from someone else within the town. Someone who feared the past becoming known again. Before he could explain further, a police siren echoed again. The figure looked frightened and began to run. The police car appeared from the other side of the street, chasing him. Armin and Layla stepped aside. The figure ran into the narrow lanes between houses. The police followed. The sound of running footsteps and shouting filled the air. Then a loud crash echoed from behind the houses. Armin and Layla rushed toward the sound. They found the police car stopped near a collapsed wooden platform. The figure had fallen through it. The officers reached him. He was injured but conscious. He looked at Armin and whispered that the truth lay with someone close. Someone who feared losing control. Someone who had hidden the truth of the old land dispute for years. Before he could say the name, he lost consciousness. The police took him to the hospital while Armin and Layla stood together trying to make sense of everything. They felt shaken but safe for the moment. The sun rose fully, casting warm light over the town. The long night of fear was ending. Later that day the police uncovered the truth. The person behind the danger was a man who had worked with the land dispute group long ago. He had returned quietly, hoping to restart the old plans. He feared Armin would inherit the land and refuse to sell. He wanted to scare them away before they learned the history from Armin's father. He had damaged the car, placed the warnings, and watched them from a distance. When Armin and Layla learned this, they felt a mix of relief and sadness. Their wedding day had been touched by danger, but the truth was now in the open. The man was arrested, and the town finally felt safe again. In the days that followed, Armin and Layla stayed close to their families. The fear slowly faded, replaced by gratitude. Their love grew stronger because they had faced danger together. They visited the bridge 1 week later. The repaired rails shone in the sunlight. The river moved gently below. Armin held Layla's hand and promised her that their life ahead would be filled with peace and honesty. Layla smiled and said they had survived the hardest beginning any couple could face. Their wedding day had nearly ended in tragedy, but it also revealed truths that had been hidden for too long. Together they stepped forward into their new life, stronger than before, guided by trust, love, and the promise of a safer future.